Hey everybody, well, the long, and I do mean long, wait for the sequel to Avatar is finally over. I had covered a while back some disturbing and interesting comments from James Cameron regarding testosterone. So I went into this cautious, shall we say. All right, so gotta let everybody know in advance, of course, despite being in the title, this is a spoiler filled review. So if you don't want to be spoiled, go watch the film, then come back here. And when you do come back here, of course, please hit that subscribe and notification button. Plus, give the video a like, it really helps. Now, on to the review. This is actually kind of in a lot of ways two films. Somewhat makes up for the fact that it has a nice over 3-hour runtime. There's a lot to pack and unpack. So the first sort of movie or sort of first half, it's not even half, honestly, it's probably close to a quarter. Nonetheless, we are reintroduced to Jake Sully and his wife, the I'm not even going to pronounce these things. It's been so long. It's late. Navi wife, and they're pop out a nice little brood. So they have, some kids. They also get a hold of Sigourney Weaver's Navi Avatar kid. I didn't see them going to the adoption agency. It was very unclear. But so, yeah, they end up with 2 boys, 2 girls. Finally, we get to a point where a 17-year-old boy, 15-year-old boy, 13-year-old girl, and maybe 9 or 10-year-old girl. I'm not good with ages. They're living the old Navi life there, hanging and banging in the forest, doing, foresty stuff. And then cut back to the humans. All right, so what are the humans up to? Well, they have arrived, yes. So Jake and the crew see lights in the sky, super, super bright. They cut, and it's actually, human ships, very, very large human ships arriving. But what they do here, I have to give credit, is very clever, very nicely done. So basically, in a nutshell, what happens is the bad guy, from the first one, Miles Quaritch, basically record a video because expecting something could happen. The humans created avatars for him and saved his memories and personalities onto a chip and then inserted them into the cloned avatar. So this is a great way to bring back what is 100% dead character with the added bonus, and they make a point of pointing this out, so I could give Cameron credit where it's due, that he's not the same person. He merely has the memories and personality Quaritch. And this, of course, becomes important later on. They end up doing this for his whole kind of crew. We then see basically like a terraforming begin. Big ships land, and out come loaders, the biggest bulldozers you've ever seen in your life. And they also make a nice little point of these ships are large. I mean, they are massive. And when they hit ground with basically clearly chemical thrusters, they put off a very wide, very large arc of fire, and they destroy the forests and they destroy the animals. Again, it makes a nice point that, hey, these are not, the friendliest people. They got the tech, they got the stuff, and when Jake and the crew attempt to fight back with some kind of defense, they are, of course, roundly defeated, and they very quickly catch on that it is Quaritch and that he's got a personal beef with Sully. Goes so far as to kidnap his kids and tries to use them against him. There's even a subplot that is of extreme import, and again, credit where it was due. Sully's family, the little 13-year-old girl, she's got a hots for, they took the baby, Quaritch's baby, from the first film. He and some of the human scientists kind of remained on Navi peacefully, and so he's been raised, but he's been raised to be kind of like a local, a native. Right? So even though he's, white boy, human, he's got the dreadlocks and he's got a little paint all over him, and he, wears loincloths, the whole 9 yards. Homeboy's gone native. Established this, kids there involved. Quaritch, the older, Miles, has used the kids as bait. And so since he failed, and so he gets his kids back and gets back Miles's kid, they decide that their best option is to flee. But the adult Miles capped his effective son, and, even makes a point of saying that it isn't his son. The human general, female, is torturing through something like a primitive psychic probe, to be all honest. Torturing the boy. It doesn't work, hey, he's strong. Basically, the adult Miles is like, hey, let me try something different. And, basically kind of takes the kid under his wing and says, look, I know you're not going to do this, and I respect that. You are Miles Quaritch's blood, and he wouldn't give up. So why don't you just tag along with me, and, we'll hang and bang. And the kid's like, well, I guess that's better than the psychic probe. They also make a little mention General does that I believe is going to become important later on. Well, she basically mentions that it's no longer just a mining operation, that apparently the Earth is dying, and so they are looking to move the entire human race over to Pandora, and then it's dropped. Again, I think it'll become important later on. So that kind of ends the first movie within the movie, because now Jake and the wife and kids are off across the ocean to find a brave new world to live in. All right, so after thinking about this for a hot second, I realized maybe that it should have been 3 movies instead of just 2. And the reason being is that once Jake and the crew get to this new land, the titular title of the film finally comes into play. Yumi Navi, whose existence is basically around coastal areas and water. So whereas Jake and the crew and what we met from the first film were also forest dwellers, these are ocean people. They've even evolved a little bit different. They got a little closer to flippers. Their tails are not skinny. They're thick, which obviously assists in navigation and that sort of thing. And we spent a very, very long time. It could have been a movie by itself. I believe there's a purpose, but we spent a very long time getting to know these people, their culture, their activities. It's all kind of surrounded by Jake and his kids, specifically his kids, in all honesty, trying to fit in. Being bullied, which is always cool. Love the bullies. But these weren't very good bullies because, of course, they turned in the end. They also have a nice subplot going on with these migratory whales, including one that was an outcast, the outcast kid. So, again, it's all tied together. It's all very, very well done. Of course, it's all stunningly beautiful, not taking away from any of that. It is definitely a pause in the action. You get peppered in a handful of scenes here and there. Basic Miles bonding with his kid a little bit and tracking Jake. And then we finally get the third film, the payoff, whereby, Quaritch has found Sully. And then again, new subplot is also introduced. So the new subplot, which is a bit shoehorned in, and I only mention these things because I believe it will become very, very, very important later on, is that they go on a boat with this guy who's all about hunting these migratory whales, the same ones that Jake and his new tribe are bonding and hanging and banging with. And the reason that he's doing this after they actually capture one is there is some liquid in their brain, and it produces like a vial of liquid this big, so it's super duper rare. He says that vial's worth 80 million whatevers. Guess that's supposed to be an equivalent to dollars today. But the important note is that, according to him, that bright yellow liquid allows human beings to stop aging. And again, it's casually mentioned and not really pressed, but I believe that's going to become a major factor down the road. So we kill one of the whales, we get our anti-aging treatment, then we leave it out so that Jake and his crew can find out and understand the humans have arrived, and they're gonna kill. What then ensues is the huge, epic, climactic final battle, full of twists and turns and suspense and lots of explosions, don't get me wrong. And they also have a very nice tie-in, and that, again, I think is going to become important later on. Earlier in the film, found Miles's down ship with his human corpse with the 2 arrows through it from the first movie. And they managed to get video footage of the final moments that young Miles, the boy, gets to watch. And in that, he sees Jake's wife go batshit, feral, teeth fangs out, just psycho nutbag before she drives the arrow home. And obviously he's grown up with her. He's never seen her like that before. All the humans around him are talking about savages and animals, and now he actually sees one, and one he knows. And then tie that in this climactic final battle, one of the almost final aspects, got to blow up more stuff after it, but one of the almost final aspects is the adult Miles avatar grabs a 13-year-old girl, so Jake's wife just feels perfect time for her to go feral nutbag, grab his kid, and threaten to kill his kid, and try to do an exchange, kid for a kid, even though this is supposed to be like kind of an adoptive kid of hers. And, you know, they play the whole game of, I don't care, he's not really my kid. Oh, wait a minute, she cut him in the chest, she's really gonna do it. Okay, fine, we'll exchange them. What's important and essential here is that young Miles now sees, wow, this chick is nuts. I mean, she is feral. She did that to my dad a long time ago, and now she's willing to do it with me, and I've grown up with her the whole time. Now, it's not enough to turn him against them. Later on, when he finds dear old dad at the bottom of the ocean drowning, he attempts to flee, but he doesn't. Instead, pulls him out of the water, saving his life, but then leaving to return to the family for now. However, there is one slight hiccup in all of this end finale big explosion fight sequence. The big hiccup being Jake's eldest kid, the 17-year-old, ends up getting shot while saving his siblings and dies. One shot, you know, sort of this area on the front, but then the back a different one, who knows? But that's it, he did. And this again served a purpose, believe it or not. Not just to make you sad, but at the very, 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 very end of the film, there's a nice ceremony, Way of the Water people ceremony for Jake's dead kid, and he goes down into some, you know, freaky looking coral that basically kind of all sucker grab him, and it's stated that they're gonna eat him, so he goes back into the water, but they don't actually show it. And then Jake, you know, goes up to the tribe leader and is like, all right, we're out of here, we'll see you, you know, we'll leave tomorrow, because obviously, you know, humans are coming to hunt and kill us. And he's like, no, your kid's been eaten by coral, you're one of us. And so that is going to now allow him and, you know, the kids to not just stay, but be part of the tribe. But there's reasons for everything that they do. Obviously, Jake is now part of this tribe, so it's not, we don't have to have him moving around. This tribe's gonna have to learn to fight, do a stand, and everything else. This is all done, though, for a very curious reason. And the curious reason is this. James Cameron has announced that there's gonna be multiple Avatar movies. We've seen this. Hollywood seems to reach a point, and this is, you know, recently, maybe the last decade or so, where they're making movies assuming that there's going to be a sequel. That assumption, these movies are going to make enough money to warrant a sequel. Now, that doesn't always happen, A. B, far more important, is that there is an axiom in, well, there used to be, and that's that every film should stand on its own. Doesn't matter if there's a sequel planned, it must stand on its own. Now, this film does thread the needle, because it does stand on its own. If there is no sequel after this, if somehow it doesn't make $1 billion, it will, then we don't have to worry about large unanswered questions. There are definitely unanswered questions. Who is the adopted daughter of Sigourney Weaver's father? What's next for adult Miles Avatar? What's next for humanity? What's next for the Navi? I mean, there's all those questions, and they will, I'm sure, be answered subsequently in the Avatar movies. But they aren't enough to say that I couldn't just enjoy this movie by itself if it was just by itself. So kudos to that. James Cameron, when he wants to make a good movie, can make a good movie. I really expected to hate this film. I'm not gonna lie, especially when he's talking about how testosterone is toxic. But again, there was plenty of it in there. We didn't have any Mary Sues, so, you know, kudos. There was definitely a very clear message about the destructive force of humanity against nature, but it wasn't beat over your head. It was subtle, brilliant. So yeah, I'm gonna definitely recommend Avatar: Way of the Water. Now, there's one very disturbing aspect to this film, and if you are triggered by sensitive topics, then I don't know why you're watching this channel to begin with. But nonetheless, buckle up. All right, well, since YouTube is actively engaging in censorship these days, gonna have to tiptoe around this. Pisses me off, but it is what it is. And I don't want to even pretend for a second that this was intentional, that there was any kind of prurient thought process behind this. It is what it is. And what it is I highly suggest to the FBI, they go every 1 p.m. matinee screener of this film and arrest every single guy in the back row. Why? Because, I'm sorry, it is what it is, but the film in many aspects is a pedo fever dream. The Navi themselves wear loincloths, and the women generally have either hair or ornamentation or sometimes a little strap covering their breasts. The same holds true for the 13 and 9-year-old. And then if you're into boys, I guess, same holds true for little boys. It's just constant. And don't get me wrong, I wasn't looking. I don't think there's ever any nudity. I mean, obviously it's a PG-13 film. But much like those, kitty beauty pageant shows or the kitty bikini shows, it's on that level of creep. It's on that level of disgusting. And obviously, the justification is very simple in story. These are what these people wear. They're native. Blah 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 blah. I get all that, and again, I'm not saying that it was intentional. I'm not saying it was any kind of prurient thing. But hey, pedo gonna pedo, and they're gonna grab it where they can grab it. So maybe on the flip side, from my first suggestion, this is a public service, and the FBI can do that clean sweep. But just kind of know that it is a little unsettling at times. Otherwise, that's my review of Avatar: Way of the Water. If you've seen it, I'd be curious to hear what you have to say, so to speak. And of course, you do that by chiming in the comment section below.